Let's give a warm round of applause for Emma. Hi. I have a few props. Give me a second. I don't know if I'm more nervous to do this talk or just to go without my phone for 15 minutes. Let me figure this out. Okay. Yeah, so every single... Fuck, I forgot about the mic. Every single slide was made by hand. If you guys want one after, I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. Maybe throw them off stage. I think they'll get mad at me for that, but I don't know where to start, so start I just will. I'm Emma. I'm an artist and content creator, and making art is the most uncomfortable thing I do, apart from standing on stage with a microphone. For context, I've made a lot of art during my time on Earth, much more times than I've been given a mic. I've made these things. Often being an artist is associated with being a free spirit and, oh my God, and impulsive, and although a lot of people would probably describe me exactly like that, I wouldn't. When people say trust your gut, I want to tell them that my gut tells me to wrap myself in a blanket and binge watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia for 5 days straight. But I was not put on this earth to be comfortable. My gut is not a reliable narrator. After all, I would not be standing here had I chosen to be comfortable. But is it my gut that's the issue? Or the fact that I'm questioning it in the first place? I don't know, and there's no point in figuring it out. Because if I spend any more time questioning it, I'll stay bundled up on episode 14, clicking play next episode, feeling like there's got to be more out there for me. I'm going to take a breath. Oh my God. I was raised by a Turkish physicist and a molecular biologist. I was raised by overthinkers. With the most innate value placed in science and logic came a daughter who chose to pursue computer science because although I was often praised for my creativity and for being a bit of a freak and having a different outlook, science was objective. Science is noble, science is difficult, and if I could do it decently enough, then I was meant to. I got a cushy job lined up for me at Ottawa's sweetheart tech company, Shopify, the second I graduated high school and worked as a software developer for 5 years while getting my computer science degree on the side. Although I thought about dropping out daily, there were parts of my degree that I loved. First and foremost, I love being trained to understand a computer. It felt like a familiar language and an easy way to process information. We were taught about the nature of algorithms, which is the word for a set of rules to be followed in a calculation. If you were faced with a problem, you knew you were an algorithm away from being able to understand the problem from every single angle. Once you approached every problem knowing there was an algorithm to solve it, everything felt less daunting. Although the problems being solved were very specific, it opened my eyes to be able to see nearly everything in this world through that lens. Everything was objective and based on fact. Everything was a pattern that was being repeated somewhere else. Everything was either a 1 or a 0. Hearing this new way of processing information really tickled the part of my brain that loved objectivity. I started realizing everything around me operated the same way a computer did, including myself. One of the first things you're taught when coding is the if statement. The computer reads, if this, then that. Then do that. Well, if it's sunny outside on a given day, then I will be in a better mood. If I'm in a better mood, I could be more open to making a new friend. If I make a new friend, I might learn something I hadn't known before, and this process goes on forever. And then this happens to every single person, every single day, all the time. There are infinite if statements happening at every moment. I can't process them all. With AI, we will be able to one day, but not me and not now. I can't predict what the weather will be tomorrow. I can't predict how it will make me feel. And I can't predict to how anyone will react to anything. And I can't predict to how you guys will react if I show you this right now. And I wouldn't want to if I could. Wondering if every decision I'm making is the best one for me at the time is a regular occurrence. Often getting myself stuck in a recursive thought pattern and staying stagnant and wasting time until there is no time left to make a decision. And I inevitably choose the first option I thought about in the first place. I noticed how it reduced my confidence immensely and made others aware of my lack of confidence in a moment, and creates its own recurring cycle of self-doubt that leads to inaction and missing opportunities. Look into the fig tree analogy later. It's the easiest cop-out of doing scary things by saying you're a perfectionist. What caught my eye about art and design was that there was no formula. There was nothing to spend infinite time on processing because there was no right answer. If everything in the world was ones and zeros, science was the one, meaning the known factor, and art was the zero, infinite potential. And everything in everyday life is wavering between the two. So now, I'm a software engineer with a hunch that art is the direction for me. This decision felt like coming home after a long trip away. But I want to make art, and I don't know where to start. I want to make art, but I don't think I'm good enough yet. The most daunting part about being an artist is not the taxes, not the contracts, not the turning down seeing your friends because you're working on a weird project that you can't explain. It's the acceptance that there is no right answer, and everything is subject to criticism. Coming from a background in science, there was always a right answer. I realized the hardest part about wanting to become an artist was shutting down the part of my brain that wanted to check if everything I was doing was right before I even did it. Until I started thinking of myself as a walking science experiment, or as my own computer program that I was writing as I was going along. To think of yourself as a walking science experiment is the active practice of not taking anything personally and knowing there is no right answer. It's the practice of testing something and observing what comes of yourself as the outcome, and then repeating this program. This made me be able to see everything I am as art and separating the art from the artist. Now, old habits die hard, and naturally, I'm unable to let go of my nature to question how everyone will objectively react to the subjectivity of my own art. After all, subjectivity is the truth to one, and objectivity is the truth to all. But I've put that aside enough to be able to call myself an artist for the past few years. And I have a few mental processes put in place to be able to do so. Use curiosity as a compass. This is particularly effective against the crowd favorite thought of, I want to make art and there's so much I want to make, but I don't know where to start. Thinking is a function of the human mind with a purpose as useful as any other bodily function. And curiosity is an underratedly useful byproduct of thought. Being your own science experiment means when your brain goes, what if, that you are willing to honor that question, the body that it came from, and everything that led up to that point in order to figure it out. When I first started making the shift into art and design, I was curious about creativity and how one idea could lead to another, and then the other, and so forth. My first exercise as an artist was very small. It was to draw something I'd never seen before on a sticky note every day after work. To me, this was the simplest exercise of creativity. It was fueled by the question, what if I picked the medium with the least amount of resistance and focused on training the creativity itself? Those were real sticky notes from like 5 years ago. Next is using the repetitive thoughts as a clue. It is your body urging you to explore a direction it was meant to go in. A prop is coming in. If you realize you've never seen a pair of jeans, oh my God. Guys, my notes are gone.
Can we have a tech support, please?
Can we have a not sure?
Oh, man. If you realize you've never seen a pair of jean mins and start repeatedly wanting to make a pair of jean mins but have never sewn a piece of clothing, that is your body still telling you, I want to figure out how to make jean mins. And there is probably a reason why it wants to that you don't know yet. View it as a question that you're meant to find the answer to. You will never be able to predict what comes of these unknowns, and that's why it's often easier to silence them than to pursue. None of my favorite products were the ones I knew the outcome of. I made this Tamagotchi, a Tamagotchi with the functionality of an Apple Watch, because I love the vibe of a Tamagotchi, but I hated the functionality. And I love the functionality of an Apple Watch, but I hated the vibe. I thought about the Tamagotchi every day for months, but didn't act on it because there was no tangible reward in sight. But the worms in my brain were telling me to make it every single day. and they were telling me to buy multiple Apple Watches on Facebook Marketplace and antagonize everyone I knew who had one. Then obviously it had to get done. And it ended up being one of my most popular concepts to date. Upon sharing it on social media, it got my idea out to hundreds of thousands of people around the world and being unintentionally used to show people she thinks differently and she trusts herself enough to prove it. And I've received so many messages about people wanting to buy it. The manufacturing is a whole other mouse to catch. But now people have a reason to stick around. The universe honors you in ways you can never predict for using your curiosity as a compass for action. Hell, if I told you that the version of me that was drawing on a sticky note every day at her desk job, that one day her work would end up on a Nike shoe, this is foreshadowing. Because of it, I would have probably made the situation very awkward and gone too nervous to keep going with it. There is value from not knowing where things will end up. You aren't meant to see how everything unfolds. Because when you start, you aren't ready for it. You become ready for it by doing it and not thinking about it. The next subject. Like a programming language has variables that have constant value, like a spoken language has words, you must create your own dictionary of symbols. If you see yourself as a jack of all trades as remotely as I do, you have to create your own constants. To me, this is synonymous with creating your own design style or design language. A design language is the system in place to create a cohesive feel to a product or brand. The way all Apple software feels the same is often because of their extremely calculated design language. They have products and fonts and protocols to make everything feel cohesive so that people feel comfortable when they innovate. I've worked on building a few design languages, from Shopify's Polaris to Froskate's branding to even this guy's. There is a dictionary of symbols associated with each of these that help you understand what you're interacting with. When it comes to a brand, often these choices are calculated, and your personal style, often these choices are calculated and tested and trial and errored, but when it comes to you as a creative, these choices are your natural personal style. And your personal style can be derived from simply leaning into anything that makes you feel good. A few concepts I've noticed myself be constantly obsessed with over the years are transparency and the crossover between art and technology. These were not themes I created when I first decided to become an artist, but rather patterns I've noticed in myself from just doing the damn thing for a while. The theme of transparency came from the need to be honest about my practices and emotions when sharing my work. Because hell, I'm not qualified. I didn't study art. I'm just a guy. But I'm a guy who tries. I'm a guy who stayed up till 5 a.m. trying and then ruined my entire next day because of how burnt out I was trying. I've had my successes, and that's how I ended up standing here. But I'm also insecure, and I make bad decisions sometimes. But as long as I own up to everything and share it along the way, there is comfort in not needing to hide, especially in a world of sharing only the successes. On a more literal note about transparency, I've also just been obsessed with transparent things like this DS, because you can see everything that makes it be able to do what it does. This symbol I saw on the keyboard when I first got my work MacBook on my first day became a symbol for technology to me, and is one of my favorite symbols. On the keyboard, it's a variable action key that helps serve the function of whatever button you pressed it with, like the Command Z button being the undo function. One of my first jobs as a freelancer was working with the restaurant Arlo, and although I only met their artist Patrick once, he asked if I wanted to come to Yukon with him to help teach kids about Shopify. I said yes, and was obviously a bit skeptical, especially after explaining the confusing lore to everyone around me and assuring them it was a good idea to go. On my flight there, I booked myself a window seat, which I never do, intentionally to look out. And I saw this looped square highway. I thought about the button on my keyboard and how interesting it was that humans repeat patterns on different scales for different purposes. I took it as a sign that I was in the right place. A few months later, I impulsively sent myself to Copenhagen because I knew it was a country with renowned design, and I wanted to give myself time by myself to think about art. While roaming around on my own, I noticed these command symbols were everywhere, pointing to destinations I was already planning on going to. I Googled it and learned that in this context, they meant special attraction. All the more feeling I was in the right place. After further Googling, I found that the loop square has existed forever, showing up in multiple places throughout history. In my searches, I found that the original Apple designer, Suzanne Kerr, we kind of look similar right now, don't we? Brought the symbol to the first Macintosh's keyboard in 1984 to represent the command function, because she saw the same signs when she was in Sweden and was enamored with the same signs of attraction. Perhaps it's a coincidence, but I chose to give it significance. No one owns this symbol today. It's an abstract symbol for whatever you want it to mean. So I claimed it as my own personal dictionary. I claimed it in my own personal dictionary as a symbol that represents abstraction itself, a concept that ties both art and technology. At the end of the day, symbols for you can be as simple as your favorite colors, your favorite era of fashion, or themes derived from your own favorite artist. But they serve a purpose in guiding you towards places you are unsure of going and your creative direction. When there are so many unknowns in the infinitely open world game of art, weird little things that scratch your brain are enough to ground you in where you're going and help ground others around you as a byproduct. And my last, but probably most important tip for the self-proclaimed overthinking artist is the importance of sharing your work. This enables you to be a satellite in the network of information in the world. If anyone here doesn't know me personally, but knows of me, it's probably because of the space I've taken up on social media. I wasn't always extremely public on the internet. Now I am, but at the time, the performance of it all made me uncomfortable. I had 3 posts, 2 of which didn't share my face, and the last one was a group photo. It was a cop-out. And it was fine if I was just a guy working my stable job in software. But if I wanted to be an artist, people would have to see my art. If you go to my socials now, you'll find some comments saying my work is cringe. But for the most part, there's a lot of support. But it wasn't always like that. It's easy to support someone when everybody else does. But at the start, it's genuinely awkward as fuck. This was the first art-related thing I ever posted on Instagram 4 years ago. It got no comments and very few likes. At the time, my only friends were in software who jokingly mocked the pursuit of art. There was virtually no support. And that's fine. You have to give people something they want to support. And people love to support someone who's trying. So I kept trying and sharing and debating posting things and sharing them regardless because I wanted to take a risk and honestly just feel something. When there wasn't much support, it became a fun game for myself to play. One of my grounding philosophies is that it's always better to try than to not. And by viewing myself and my sharing as an experiment, it was easier to not take reception personally. I was able to separate myself from the outcome of a post. But the reception is not useless. I used the reception of how well a post did to guide me towards what the world wanted and where my voice would fit in. If the reception was bad, I became more confident in the act of taking a risk. If the reception was good, I became more confident in my own work. Over time, making and posting my art became the thing I looked forward to the most in my day. I would lock myself in my room, make art, stick to a posting schedule, and funnel my paychecks into ads to get my work seen by more people. Instagram guided me towards people that genuinely liked my outlook on the world and made me feel less alone in my pursuit of it all. I met some of my best friends through the internet, connected with people that relate to the weirdness of it all, and got found by a bunch of clients that I still work with today, like Froskate. Froskate is a Chicago-based skate collective that I started designing for remotely through the power of the internet. The creator of Froskate found me through Instagram and knew she wanted to work with me because of my style that seeped through all the work that I put out. My projects with Froskate started off small, but enabled me to refine its design language through everything we made, from flyers to clothes. This eventually caught the attention of Nike SB, who now wanted to work with us to create apparel and shoes. Not all skate collectives get their own Nike dunks, but our style seeped through all the work we put out and was cohesive because it was genuine. These are the shoes. My designs are on the bottom, on the inside, and throughout the color scheme. And when the shoes released, I got the confidence to quit my 9-to-5 job in software and got the audacity to see what happens if I tried doing art full-time. And I haven't had a normal job since. Humans have been alive much longer than they've been making calculated decisions. Trust your gut. Calculated decisions led to optimization, but natural intuition led to survival. After this talk, I don't know what the world has in for me next, but by viewing myself as my own walking science experiment, I know there is no wrong answer. I can't know where to start, but start I just will. Thank you.